And welcome to our first edition of the Cowboy Basketball Roundup with OSU head coach Mike Boynton, Oklahoma State's first-year head coach. And let me just ask you this. This is a new thing for you and first time as a head coach. What have you learned about yourself during the last several months since you became head coach? Anything, something new about yourself you didn't know?
I don't know how much new I've learned about myself as much as I've learned all the responsibilities that it takes to be the guy sitting 6 inches over on the bench.
6 inches makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does. But I've really enjoyed it. I've learned that, it takes a collection of people to have success and to make this thing work. And I've got a great staff and a really, really strong group of young men who believe in each other and have allowed us to give them the opportunity to coach them and put them in position to have success on the court. You
mentioned your staff. You have two former major college head coaches sitting on the bench next to you, John Cooper and Scott Sutton. How much has that helped you?
It helps tremendously. The experience that those guys have, the amount of confidence that they are able to bring to the table because they've been in those moments. They've been in situations that I'm experiencing for the first time in terms of some of the decisions I have to make. They have great poise and presence about themselves. They're great with our players. And so I couldn't imagine having a better situation than to have both of those guys sitting to my right and left on a nightly basis in this profession.
But you've been in those moments, too, as a former starting point guard at the University of South Carolina, of course, as a longtime assistant head coach. So as you've gone through this first year, does anyone in particular kind of come to mind in terms of, oh, my gosh, the influence of this coach or that person has really become prominent as you've worked your way through this first year? Anybody that just jumps out or no?
I mean, a lot of people come to mind. I said from the very beginning that me being in this position is a product of being surrounded by and pushed by very, very great people throughout my life. Beginning with my dad and my mom. They were great influencers, people who always pushed me to be my very best at everything I did. But then as I got into basketball, the coaches that I played for, and then as a coach, the people that I worked for and with for the last 13 years have all had a great impact, none the least of which is Eddie Fogler, the guy who recruited me to the University of South Carolina. I'm still very close to him to this day. And Dave Oldham as well, who I played for 3 years, and still have a chance to reflect upon some things from time to time with.
One thing that's very clear in watching you do your job is you really try to instill confidence in your players. So how do you define that balance between instilling that confidence, but maybe, creating the discipline and, laying down the law when you need to?
That's one of the great challenges as a coach, is to strike the balance between giving your guys freedom and letting them know that you believe in them, but also helping them understand the structure that you want things done within. And again, because of my staff, I've been able to do that for the most part every game. However, it's still things that we've got to learn from a player's standpoint. But I always know that this game is a confidence-driven game. If you don't feel good about what you're doing on the court, you're not going to have very much success doing it. So I try to make sure that these guys understand that I have full faith in them, that I believe that the work that they've put in to this point is going to give us great opportunities to have success and build this program the way we want to.
And it would seem to me that the classic example of that confidence was the end of the Florida State game December 16th down in Miami. You make countless winning plays at the end of that game to secure a victory over an undefeated team that was ranked in the top 25.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. At this level of college basketball, there's very little difference in talent. And all the coaches are really good. The environments you play in are really good. And so you got to figure out a way to, what's the difference going to be? You got to make winning plays. You have to be more together than the other team is. You have to be tougher than the other team is. You got to be more committed to your game plan than the other team is committed to theirs. And in the Florida State game, we showed that. And it was, fortunately for us, a great bounce back from losing the game at home to a really good opponent in Wichita State. To go on the road, not necessarily in Tallahassee, but much closer to Tallahassee than to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and come out with a close win gives you a little bit more confirmation that the things you're doing really work.
Stay with us. We break down the Cowboys' efforts in conference play so far when we return on the Cowboy Basketball Roundup. The Cowboy Basketball Roundup with Mike Boynton is brought to you by Bud Light, proud friend of Oklahoma State Athletics, famous among friends. By the visitstillwater.org Shop, Dine, and Stay partners. Be sure to shop, dine, and stay in America's friendliest college town. By Mercy Health, your life is our life's work. And by OG&E, power at the speed of life. We're back on the Cowboy Basketball Roundup with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Boynton, and let's just work our way into conference play a little bit here. You started conference play off 1-2. Of course, the 2 losses have come to teams ranked in the top 10 in the country, and you opened with West Virginia, and the thing is, you got off to a good start after a little bit of a tough opening minute or two. You led by as many as 9, and the thing that jumped out is I think 10 of your 14 first-half baskets were pretty much point blank under the basket. How'd you get those good shots?
Well, we were prepared, and our guys had a great focus coming into that game. But going back to something you mentioned, the 2 losses being to teams in the top 10, all 4 of our losses to teams that are in the top 15 or 20. And we've played a really competitive schedule, which has given us an opportunity to have confidence this time of year. But more in the West Virginia game, I thought our guys were locked in. We were ready to play. We were ready for it to be a battle for 40 minutes. We just didn't play as smart down the stretch, and we didn't make enough of those winning plays that we talked about earlier to win a game. In this league, you have to do that.
One of the reasons you had the 9-point lead was Tavares Shine. He had 15 points and 5 rebounds in that game. What a tremendous turnaround. A guy you didn't even know if he'd play this year. Yeah,
I mean, Tavares Shine, when I took over, was still overcoming his back surgery. And we had some very direct conversations about his future here. I told him if he wanted to be here, I would support that, but I wasn't guaranteeing him anything. I told him that if he worked hard enough and earned it, he would have opportunities just like everybody else would. As a guy with a lot of pride and wanting to be as good as he can be, he worked his butt off with our trainers and his doctors and followed every order that they gave him and put himself in position to have a tremendous season this year.
And it's interesting, if you break down how he scored his first couple of years here, it was roughly 55% of his points came from 3-point shots. Now that's more like a third. So one thing that seems to have evolved is he scores in more ways than he used to, right?
No question. He's a guy who has a lot of different abilities from a basketball standpoint, on the offensive end particularly. He's a really good passer, actually. He made a huge pass the other day, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, getting back to what he's been able to do in terms of transforming his game and being more aggressive, driving to the basket, getting some deflections that get us out in transition, and then getting to the free throw line where he's a really good shooter as well, but hasn't taken away from his ability to be a really good shooter from the 3-point range.
Another positive is you forced West Virginia into 18 turnovers. In fact, they made only 2 of their first 10 shots and shot 37% in the first half. What triggered that? In fact, you forced Javon Carter, who's one of the top guards in America. He had 8 turnovers, a career high.
Yeah, again, I think it's just a product of our guys being in the right place from a mental standpoint. Our staff did a great job of preparing them for what they'd see from both an offensive and defensive standpoint, and our guys were locked in on the game plan. They came out and played with an unbelievable amount of confidence, had a great amount of focus, and executed that for about 35 minutes. Now in this league, every minute counts, as we saw the other day, for you to have success. So we've got to continue to grow in that area.
And the tough thing is you were up 7, as you were talking about, 35 minutes or so. You led for much of that time. You're up 7 with 13 and a half to go. And the hard thing is you're an 80% free throw shooting team, second in America, entering the West Virginia game. And you had a stretch there midway through the second half where you went 4 for 10, which is very unusual for your team.
No question. And part of the reason we've been a really good free throw shooting team, because most games we step up there and guys see their teammates making them. And now just as that's contagious, when you step up there and you see your teammates miss a couple in a row, it starts to play with your mind a little bit. And we just gave into that. We're better than that. We know that. We've continued to work on it. And it's something that I'm sure will improve as we continue to play games in the Big 12.
So West Virginia won the game 85-79. We'll turn our attention now to an entirely different challenge. Your first true road game against the highest scoring team in the country and the nation's leading scorer, and a whole different style than West Virginia, right?
Absolutely. You talk about a team that doesn't necessarily get after you in the full court, a team that doesn't have the type of pressure defense that you faced, just 4 days prior, and it takes a totally different mental approach. Then you add in the fact that it's a rivalry game. It's a big game. It's a big game for our staff. It's a big game for our fans. It's a big game for our players. And unfortunately, they played much better than we did that day. And it's something that we definitely need to improve on, because we'll see them again here in Stillwater.
Oklahoma jumped out to an 11-4 lead, but then you go on a 10-0 run, and we're back to Tavares Shine again. He had 11 points in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, again, his story has been unbelievable. Probably needs to be told more. so that kids can continue to be inspired even when they face adversity, to keep fighting, keep believing in themselves. And if you're surrounded by people who believe in you, you can have success. But he no doubt gave us a chance in the first half to stick close. Thomas Azagua came in and gave us some really good minutes as well. But we didn't have enough from a collective standpoint. We didn't have enough guys do enough things to help us win a game like that on the road that day.
Yeah, you talked about staying in the game. You're only down 8 at half, so it didn't appear that you were in a bad position. Oklahoma outscored you 21-7 to start the second half. What changed, in your opinion?
Well, you know, they came out, they were locked in, they stayed the course. They weren't worried that it was just a 3-possession game. Because they scored so quickly and so efficiently, the fact that they were able to make a few baskets early and we struggled kind of played with our confidence a little bit, and we let it get away from us and started to play out of character a little bit.
So the Sooners win round 1 of Bedlam, and coming up next, we take a look at highlights of the Cowboys' conference win over Iowa State. Great win for the Pokes at Stillwater, and we'll look at those highlights when we return. Welcome back to the Cowboy Basketball Roundup with Oklahoma State head coach Mike Boynton. The Cowboys hosted Iowa State, game 3 of conference play, as we head to Gallagher-Iba Arena for the Cowboys and Cyclones. And, you know, an interesting thing about this game is that, you know, it was a game of streaks, kind of a game of runs. And here's Jeff Carroll getting to the basket. Very efficient performance for him.
Yeah, we needed him to bounce back. Jeff knew he didn't play very well. Norman, a couple days before, he wanted to prove that he can be a reliable source of offense and defense for us.
And speaking of defense, boy, you had Iowa State out of sorts offensively early.
Yeah, we did a really good job of pressuring them and forcing them out on the floor, causing some turnovers that gave us a chance to get out in transition.
In fact, Iowa State started the game 3 out of its first 16 from the field. Lindy Waters missed the Oklahoma game, comes back and plays in this game, and then you see Mitchell Solomon you're up by 14 at this point.
It was great to see Lindy back, that's for sure. And you know, Mitchell Solomon's been our warrior all year, and we've been getting off to really good starts. We've got to continue that as Big 12 play.
But then Donovan Jackson gets hot.
Yeah, he was the guy we targeted. We knew him from last year. He gave us some trouble last year, especially in the Big 12 tournament. And it's a guy we got to do a better job on the next time we play him up in Ames.
Iowa State went on a 17-0 run. Averett's basket just before half made it 34-32. What was your message to the team at halftime after you'd led most of the way and then lost the lead?
Yeah, you have to play this game every possession. In this league, you can't take possessions off, and you certainly can't take segments of a game off. And so I think they got the message and played better in the second half.
And Tavares Shine off the assist from Mitchell Solomon puts your team up by 2. And then it's Jeff Carroll with the miss and the putback by McGriff. And you're in a tight game here. And again, just kind of a game of spurts going back and forth. Back on the offensive end, and as we mentioned, Jeff Carroll knocking down the jumper. You look at the stat sheet for this game for him. He ends up with 24 points and 8 rebounds, but he only took 15 shots. Yeah,
very efficient game from the offensive standpoint. He's a guy that's got to continue to rebound for us and be a force defensively as we continue through this league.
Speaking of forces, Mitchell Solomon with a great run here. He had another solid performance, 14 points, 9 boards. What's been the key to his turnaround?
His belief in his own ability, his belief in his ability to help his teammates on the defensive end, and his consistency has been the key to our team so far this year.
Yeah, in fact, you look about the last month and a half, he's averaged 12 points and 9 rebounds. Then Iowa State's up 8 with 3.5 to go. This was a big play here from Averett.
Huge, huge. We ran a little zone action against them. They tried to kind of milk the clock a little bit on us, but he made a big shot and cut the lead a little bit for us to put us in position to make this comeback.
And here, speaking of in position to make comebacks, boy, a couple of big blocks coming up.
Yeah, that's just effort. That's no scheme. That's a guy who's got beat, who knows that his teammates needed to make a play, and Lindy Waters, who wasn't available to us Wednesday, makes a play for us.
And Kendall Smith knocks down the jumper. He had 20 points, and here comes another big block. Mitchell Solomon this time, and the thing is, not only the block, you get out in transition.
Yep. You know, every time you get a deflection, you get an opportunity to steal it and put yourself in transition, and we were able to do that and then put ourselves in position to win this game.
And Donovan Jackson, the best free throw shooter in the Big 12, makes the first, misses the second, and Kendall Smith sends it to overtime.
Yeah, just being a senior, making a play, being aggressive, driving to the basket, knowing that they wouldn't want to foul, made a really good decision to get into the paint.
So at the end of regulation, Cowboys tied up. Had a screwy sequence here where the clock didn't start. It stopped. Donovan Jackson misses there, and you head to the extra session. They take a look, try to sort it out, realize obviously nothing to be done but go to overtime.
Yeah, first overtime game, and our guys responded the right way. We were committed to the defensive end, and we were able to close it out by getting some stops in key moments.
And the thing is, Iowa State jumped out to a 4-point lead, and then you just turned right around, started getting stops, and got control of the game.
Yeah, we showed tremendous resilience in this game. You know, we got down several times, and there were several opportunities for us to give in. We didn't. We kept fighting, led by most of our seniors on the court at the time, and those were big plays down the stretch for Kendall and Jeffrey Carroll.
And, you know, the thing is, and we talked about this earlier with the Florida State game, you get into crisis mode as you see Kendall Smith missing and the put back again by Carroll that gives you control of the game. But the thing is, you're making those winning plays in crisis situations, and boy, not all teams do that.
No, it's a sign of a team that's committed to winning, that's committed to playing the game the right way, being unselfish. And again, our seniors kind of led the way for us, put ourselves in position to win by making plays on both the offensive and defensive end of the floor.
So a nice win for the Cowboys in overtime, 96-87 over Iowa State. The Cowboys beat the Cyclones for the first time in 5 years. Still to come, Coach Boynton and I later in our show preview the Cowboys' week in Big 12 basketball. K-State and Texas on the horizon. We'll have that later on. Stay with us. Shot blocked by Solomon and rebounded by Smith on the run. Down the floor to Carroll, drive to the goal, up and under layup, good. 79-77 Iowa State. 8 seconds. Kendall Smith for Oklahoma State, dribbling left wing. Drives it down the lane. Floater from 5. Good. Off the ball, it squirts free. Taken by Carroll. Carroll pass down the floor to Shine. Layup. Good. And a foul called. Smith for the lead. And the foul slam by Carroll. Oklahoma State finishing overtime on a 9-0 run.
This is a testament to this team's never give up attitude.
Dan Wells to the first conference win, Coach.
I just need you guys to be fighters. Every night, come out knowing 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever it takes. That's what we got to have.
Stay tuned. We'll wrap things up on the Cowboy Basketball Roundup after these messages. Back to wrap things up on the Cowboy Basketball Roundup. And next up, Coach, a road trip to Kansas State. Your thoughts on K-State?
A really good team. Obviously, have shown what they're capable of by some of the success they've had early in the year. Already went up to Ames and won in very impressive fashion. And a team that presents different challenges, as all 10 teams in this league do, and one we'll have to be prepared for to come out with a win.
And then you'll face a team that's pretty different than them at home, the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, what a difference a year makes, and a really, really good player, and Mo Bamba, who's the big freshman for him. Matt Coleman, they got it solidified at the point guard position where they struggled a little bit last year. So 2 totally different games. Certainly one on the road early, one at home late in the week that we certainly hope our fans will come out and support us for.
For Coach Boynton, I'm Dave Hunziker. Thanks for watching. See you next week on the Cowboy Basketball Roundup. The Cowboy Basketball Roundup with Mike Boynton is brought to you by Bud Light, proud friend of Oklahoma State Athletics, famous among friends. By the visitstillwater.org Shop, Dine, and Stay partners. Be sure to shop, dine, and stay in America's friendliest college town. By Mercy Health, your life is our life's work. And by OG&E, power at the speed of life.